Hey crochet fans, Tasha Butterfield here, alpaca rancher and crochet instructor. Welcome to Forever Bliss Crochet. Today we're talking about 3 different ways in which you can work into your foundation chain. I'm also going to talk about why you may still want to work into a foundation chain rather than doing a chainless foundation stitch. First, let's talk about the chain itself. What we're looking at here is the front of it where we see the V's, and I'm holding it out in such a way that we can name our loops. So facing up is the top loop. Of course, facing down is the bottom loop. And when you flip it over, that is the ridge, the back bump, the backbone. People call it different things. And actually, I call it different things too. I don't always call it the same thing. Well, these are the 3 parts of our chain, the back and the 2 loops in the front. We have different options in which we can work into one thing or 2 of them. First, let's talk about the easiest one to do and the one that is most likely taught to beginning students. We're going to skip the first chain and work into the second one and only go under the top loop. The reason this is taught to beginners is that it's the easiest thing to do. It's easy to find the top loop and it's easy to only go under the top loop. I'm going to do 4 stitches of each type in my sample here. So that's number 3 and number 4. Now going into only the top loop means that we have the bottom loop and the back ridge exposed. So I'll show you a sample of what that would look like. Now in all of my samples, what I've done is the first row is single crochet and then 3 rows of double, just so I didn't have to spend a long time making some bulk to my samples. We see across the bottom here what is the bottom loop of each of those chains, and it kind of gives that angled look because it is half of a V. We flip it over and we have the back ridge still exposed on all of those chains. Next, we have going into the top loop and the ridge on the back. So if you're used to only the top loop, this is going to take a little practice to get that ridge in the back to come with you. The advantage of this is that it does give your first row more stability. Going into 2 loops always gives you more stability than just going into 1. Let's take a look at a sample of that one. Here we have a sample of only going into the top loop and the back ridge. So all that we see here on the bottom is the bottom loop. And again, we have that same diagonal look as the first one because it's still the bottom loop and it's still half a V. But on the back, that back ridge is gone. Our third method is only going through the back ridge. The advantage of this, even though this is probably the most challenging to get used to of the 3 of these methods that I've talked about so far, the advantage of it is that it leaves both the top and the bottom loop of the front exposed, which is the V, which means your bottom edge looks exactly the same as your top edge when you finish. You're going to have complementary V's on both ends of your fabric. We finish this one and show you the sample. So here's the example of only going into the back ridge, and as I rotate this over, you can see all of the V's still on the bottom of my chain, which means, like I already said, it matches the top edge of my piece. And this is my preferred method if I'm working into a chain, a foundation chain, because I like them to match. If you're making something in which these ends are going to be exposed and having them match looks really nice. It also is beneficial in a situation where you're doing an edging, and when you work into this edge, you have V's like you're used to working into. They're easy to see and they're easy to get into. Here's the row that I've been working on. The 4 stitches on the right are where I went into only the top loop, so we are looking at the bottom loop and the back ridge. The center 4, I worked into the top loop and the back ridge, so we're only looking at the bottom loop. And the 4 on the left are where I worked into only the back ridge, leaving both parts of the V, the top and the bottom loop, exposed. So you can see, depending on how hard you want to work into the chain and what look you want, you can decide which method you prefer for your project. You may be asking yourself, why in the world would I work into a foundation chain when there are these wonderful inventions called the chainless foundation stitches? Well, let's take a look at some. I made this swatch just like the others, and I started with a chainless foundation single crochet and then 3 rows of regular double crochets. Side by side, these chainless foundation stitches actually look very different from the other stitches. I've got, this was the back ridge. This was the top loop back ridge, and this one is top loop only. The single crochet themselves look different, and so you may or may not like the look of these stitches. The advantage of this, I will say, the fabric is stretchy. There's no counting or worrying about, do you have too many or too few chains to begin your first row? But I think they look weird. I don't think they really mix in well with the rest, and your choice of which of these 4 things to do really is going to depend on what look you want. What are you making? What's it for? And like I said before, how hard you want to work, because some of these methods of going to the foundation chain are not going to be easy if you've never done them before. All of them have their merit, and it's good to just play around with all of them so you have options. Thanks for joining me today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with anyone interested, and remember to subscribe to the channel. If you have ideas for other video topics that you'd like for me to do, please tell me in the comments below. See you in the next video.